Do you love TV shows? We do too. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Anna, and we're the hosts of We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast hosted by us, a married couple with an endless love for TV.
Whether you're searching for a new favorite series or ready to revisit an old classic, we're here to guide you through an infinite world of TV shows.
Each episode, we watch and discuss the pilot for shows while also sharing personal stories that parallel the storyline.
So if you're tired of endlessly scrolling and not sure what to watch next, tune in and let us do the searching for you.
We Judge a Show by Its Pilot. New episodes every Tuesday and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Your new favorite show is just one click away. Hello everyone, welcome back to our pod.
Hi, happy Monday, but you're not listening to this on a Monday.
You're listening to this on a Tuesday. We're actually recording this the day before it's going to come out.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Well, it probably is bad in your mind.
Well, no, like immediately after we record this, I have to edit it. So
yeah,
just so it'll be ready, just so I don't have to worry about it. It's really not that big of a deal. We just went on vacation, and your work schedule has been your work trip. Your work trip schedule has been crazy. So yeah, we're kind of cutting it a little close, but I mean we're fine with it. It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But we are welcome to April. And we are actually, I mean, it is kind of cool that we're the day before April 1st. So
yeah.
We are...
No fooling.
We will be recording most of these during your month, during your birthday month. And that is the theme for April. If you listen to Treme, if you made it through without turning it off because you kept getting sad.
I know.
This is Anna's birthday month, and Anna really isn't someone that is like, it's my birthday month, we're going to do something for my birthday every day, but that's going to be the theme for this month.
Oh, yeah.
It is your B-Day, and this is going to be shows that are very female-centric, maybe created by women, or the majority of the cast are women.
Oh, yeah.
And
definitely.
Who did a really good job with selecting the shows, and it was, I mean, usually I have a big hand in picking the shows out, but this time I told Anna, I was like, you're picking all the shows. Maybe I'll suggest something. I don't think I did.
You didn't.
You had all these shows pretty much already picked out, and they just so happened to all be available, so it ended up working out that way. But another thing that we found interesting and something that was very unintentional was when you picked out the shows and we kind of had them written down and they were like in front of our face, you kind of realized that you were like, this is kind of autobiographical.
Oh, very much.
With,
yeah.
This reminds me of growing up. Oh, this reminds me of this show inspired me to become the person that I am. I watched it when I was this age. This show reminds me of when I was in college. This show reminds me of when I had just graduated college. This show reminds me of when I first moved into my first home. Like, this reminds me of the pandemic and when we were first married. And it was just kind of like, it was very, very kind of serendipitous, I guess is the best word to use.
Yeah, because when you sent me the list of all the ones that I had picked and I was looking at them, I was like, wow, each of these, like even like the themes of the shows themselves, like fit a part of my life. Yeah. And we decided to put those in the order of the month. Yes. So that is where you are listening to today is Sisters.
Yep. And so this really, this is a show that, I mean, you watched all of it. You watched the whole series.
Oh yeah.
And I confirmed by my sister because we asked her. She and my mom also watched Sisters, and I watched with them. Not nearly as invested as they were, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
But maybe they watched it in reruns, or maybe my sister was just old enough because my sister would have been about 10 when the show came out.
Yeah.
So it was enough for her to. I'm sure she wasn't understanding the multiple orgasms part, but. She was, getting the vibe of, I think, she probably wanted a sister at some point or, stuff like that. So we got a lot to talk about as always, and we're just going to go ahead and get into it. And Anna's going to give us some episode and series information.
All right, Sisters, moving in, moving out, moving on. Sisters was an American family drama that aired on NBC from May 11th, 1991 to May 4th, 1996 for 6 seasons with a total of 127 episodes. The series was created by Ron Cohen and Daniel Lippman, who would go on to create Queer as Folk. The pilot was co-written by Cohen and Lippman and was directed by Robert Butler. Butler was a long-standing TV director whose career spans over 40 years with shows like Gunsmoke, The Dick Van Dyke Show, The Twilight Zone, The Waltons, Moonlighting, and Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman.
Remember that show?
Oh, yeah, totally. Sisters centers around the Reed sisters, 4 very close but very different women living in the Chicago suburb of Winnetka. The pilot revolves around the sisters dealing with the recent loss of their father while they go through the process of saying goodbye to their childhood home. Each episode includes the sisters' weekly meetings in a sauna and flashbacks to when the sisters were children and teenagers. The main cast includes Swoozie Kurtz as Alexandra Alex Reed Halsey, the eldest Reed sister who comes across as a bit snobby and self-involved. Patricia Colember as the stable and caring Georgie Reed Witzig. Julianne Phillips as the workaholic and sometimes insensitive Frankie Reed. Frankie, I miss Frankie.
I know.
Celia Ward as the chaotic and free-spirited Theodora Teddy Reed.
Love me some Celia Ward.
And Elizabeth Hoffman as Beatrice B. Reed, the long-suffering matriarch of the Reed family. The recurring cast includes Garrett M. Brown, Heather McAdam, and Ed Marinero. Jill Novick, Sharon Martin, Riff Regan, and Tasia Shute plays the younger versions of the Reed sisters. Sisters never quite took off with the ratings, but critics praised the series for its unique format and great cast, particularly Swoozie Kurtz and Celia Ward, who were considered the breakout stars of the show. Kurtz would get nominated for 2 Emmys for Outstanding Lead Actress, and Ward would go on to win an Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress in 1994. So, when we originally watched the pilot for this pod, the entire series was available on Prime Video, but now it's only to rent or buy, but you can still watch the entire series on Plex.
Yeah, it was really weird. So I went and rewatched the episode today to write the plot summary because I realized I hadn't written it yet, and I went to Prime and it wasn't available on Prime anymore. And
wow.
So I was like, we literally just watched it like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, before the cruise, I think.
And luckily Plex is a free, it's like Tubi or Pluto. It's free streaming with ads. So if you can handle that, then you can watch it on Plex. I'm sure it'll probably get added to something at some point.
Oh, yeah.
I was surprised that it wasn't on Hulu because they usually nab up all the old shows. So
yeah, and I mean, a lot of these streaming sites go in rotation of like who's losing what. I'll pick it up,
right.
And yeah.
Okay, so we both have sisters. I obviously
both older sisters.
I'm obviously a boy, so I am not a sister, but and this is Anna month, so for a lot of these episodes for this month, you're going to be kind of taking the reins on the stories. Of course, I have a sister. If I will gladly talk about my sister dynamic, but I feel like there will be an episode in the future where I will gladly tell stories about me and my sister. But for this episode, we're going to be talking about you and your relationship with your sister, Rebecca, who is one of our first and biggest fans of the pod.
Of course, shout out to Rebecca.
And I'm sure she'll love getting all of being a big part of this episode, even though she's not here. We had an idea of interviewing our sisters for this, doing like a pre-recorded, not them like being here, but doing like a pre-recorded like 10-minute, 15-minute interview, but we just did not have the time. It would have been a lot of fun. Maybe we'll do it for another episode. There are plenty of family-oriented shows out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so go ahead and just kind of tell me about
my birth story.
I get what?
So I feel like my sister's story starts with sort of my birth story. So I am the youngest, like you. And so my 2 older siblings are about 4 years apart. And so my parents wanted a 3rd kid, and my mom was a pretty devout practicing Catholic, and I don't think she was on birth control, and they tried to have a 3rd child, but did not happen right away. Like after, my sister was born, I think they tried maybe a year or 2 after, and my mom just did not get pregnant. And so the story goes that when she, I guess, started missing her period in 1968, she actually thought she was going through early menopause.
Okay.
Because I think she had sort of given up. I think she just thought she wasn't going to have any more children. And she went to the doctor, and he's like, no, you're pregnant. And so the story is always, the joke was in my family that I was adopted. Except for the fact that I look exactly like my mother.
Yes.
And,
yes, you do.
And then my mom always said that I was always wanted, that I just didn't come when they thought I would.
Yeah.
So that was the joke. But the other story about my birth story, and I call it my birth story, but like my coming into existence story, was that both my brother and my sister wanted a brother, because my brother already had a sister, my sister, and my sister wanted to be the only girl, so she wanted a brother.
Gotcha.
Needless to say, both were probably very disappointed when I showed up.
Oh, but you were such a cute baby,
I
though.
know. But so anyway, my mom gave birth to me in April, and I was very underweight, so she had to leave me at the hospital.
I always forget that.
And
every
so,
time you tell me, I'm like, oh my God, I always forget that.
Yeah, so I had to stay, I think, 3 or 4 days at the hospital in like a little incubator to gain weight enough for them. Back in the day, you had to weigh 5 pounds.
You had to incubate.
I had to incubate. So that's why I always talk about I need to incubate and stay warm. So then I came home and I was the new little sister. So I think both my brother and my sister embraced me. My brother just treated me like the little brother he wanted, and he taught me sports and to play in the yard and to swing and to just get in the dirt and love sports. And my sister taught me about dolls and playing house, and she would carry me around on her hip. She claims that she doesn't know how I ever learned how to walk because everyone always carried me around. But she sort of, she was always like the second mom in the house. But, of course, my mother. And then she, I think, always just treated me like her own living little baby doll. So my sister and I are about 6.5 years apart. And so I will definitely admit to and accept my role as the bratty little sister.
Yes.
I definitely tortured probably my sister a lot, but my mom would always joke like to my sister, why do you even listen to her? Like she is 6 years younger than you. And I mean, like, just some jokes, and my sister, I hope if she's listening, will laugh. Like I would, at breakfast, I would tell my sister that she could only have like one biscuit. Like mom said she could only have one biscuit and that was all. And then, she would like start crying, or like when she would have dates in high school, I was, like if she was like 16 or 17, I was 10, 11, later elementary school, and I would come out and be bratty and say silly stuff or do crazy things. I will say this, and you can edit it out, but it's a true story. I don't think she would be completely mortified.
I am very surprised you're about to tell this story.
I don't know if you know what I'm going to say.
Okay.
So my sister was, a guy came over, one of her dudes that she was dating. And of course I was the bratty little sister. And in the late 70s, early 80s, tube tops were the fashion. I mean, hey, I think everything old is new again. I think tube tops are the fashion right now. And I proceeded to walk up behind her and I pulled her tube top down. Hey, I'm sure he enjoyed it. I'm just saying. He was probably like, go little sis. She, of course, wanted to murder me. But some other funny stories were like my sister and I shared a room. So in the original format of our house, we had 3 bedrooms, not 4. So my sister and I shared the front bedroom. My brother was in the small middle bedroom. And then my parents were in the back room, which was then the sewing room that you knew.
Gotcha.
And so, again, when you have dynamics between siblings that are pretty far apart in age, you know, there are things that are extremely territorial, like my sister got a stereo, and even my parents were, you know, told me that I was not allowed to touch it.
Yeah.
At one point, she put tape on the floor of areas that I could not
Classic.
go around. And, you know, but we had some really good times as sisters, and, you know, we see each other a lot. I just saw her yesterday, and, you know, I would definitely say in growing up, we were not particularly close in the way of sisters are. I mean, other than like the silliness.
Right.
But now we are definitely much closer. We probably talk every other day, if not every day. You always know when the phone rings at about 5:05. It's my sister calling me when she gets off of
between
work.
Like 5:05 and like 5:20.
Yeah, it's my sister coming home. And so, you know, we talk a lot, and I feel like we are definitely much closer now as sisters, friends, than we were as growing up. We were definitely the epitome of sisters who like fought and were brats, or I was a brat. She was, you know, I think in any evolution of siblings, you evolve and change over time. And we definitely did that. You know, it wasn't like we were hanging out together or had the same friends.
That's true,
I mean, I will say that I think I have talked about, like, when I went to high school, I always thought I would go to the high school of Cess and Rebecca because it was the one in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I would like look at her yearbooks and stuff like that. I mean, maybe that's how I like just role modeled her. I was just like, I can't wait to go to like the school she went to, or maybe be a candy striper like she was doing because it was something she did. So maybe I did, you know, look up to her in that way. What about you? I mean, what is your relationship like with Sarah?
Well, I think
because y'all are closer in age.
Because I was just about to say, I think you and I had and that's what makes conversations and podcasts interesting to listen to. I had a very different relationship with my sister than you did with Rebecca, because I don't think it was necessarily just because we were closer in age, but I also had a sister that was very maternal and was very protective of me, and I did look up to my sister. I was very envious of how, in my eyes, everything just seemed so easy for her. Like everything didn't come to her so easily, but she was just like such a problem solver, and she was such a like practical thinker. Even at a young age, I was always very much like, I wish I could do that. Like, I wish I could just be like that. And she was never afraid to like stand up for herself, and she was never afraid to like stand up for me or for Tyler, for anyone. She would stand up to a kid, she'd stand up to an adult, and like she's my Terminator. That's why, like, in the Designing Women episode, that's why she was everybody's Terminator. And and Sarah, if you're listening to this, I really hope you're not driving, and I really hope this doesn't like get you emotional, but like, my sister was kind of like my hero when I was little, and oh god. And I just really looked up to her. The older we got, I kind of began to resent the fact that she was so maternal. At the time, of course, now as an adult, I appreciate it, but at the time, I would see my other friends with their siblings, and they seemed to have a more of like a friendship type relationship with their siblings, where I didn't feel like I had that. I feel like I had another mom, and I kind of wanted a sister and not a mom. And there were plenty of times where my sister was my sister. I mean, like, we fought, she was there for me and stuff like that, but she also was always looking out for me, and it wasn't necessarily like, I may cut this part out, but it wasn't necessarily like I never felt like she had, like, if she would have caught me, like, smoking pot, she wouldn't have, even if I were like 18, 19, 20 years old.
She would have ratted you out?
She would have ratted me out. Yeah, she did. I mean, like, and it kind of caused, as I got older, once I became like kind of 18 and older, it just became more like, okay, I don't need a mother anymore. I want us to be brother and sister. I want us to have a brother-sister relationship, because I'm still immature, but I'm not a child anymore. Like, I'm still immature, I'm still have the mind of an immature little kid, but like I'm 18, 19, 20 plus years old now. Like, I want a sister. And I think it had just been too many years of her being that person in my life to where she just couldn't do that. And and it wasn't a bad, I mean, looking back on it now, I'm so grateful for it. Like, I appreciate it so much more, but at that time, I really like kind of grew to, resent feels like a strong word, but it's the only word I can really think of. Like, I really just kind of resented that I didn't have like this friendship with my sibling that I had with Tyler, because Tyler was, Tyler and I were the same age, and we were both boys, and we started out as friends before we were even stepbrothers, so that's a little unfair to compare, but like, I wanted that with my sister, like, I didn't ever really have that, and it always just kind of bummed me out, and it didn't, and it may have bummed her out, maybe now it does, maybe it doesn't, maybe I hope she doesn't regret anything, because I appreciate the type of sister that she was. But, like I keep saying, at the time, I wanted a sister, not a mom. It took us a really long time to get to where we are now. It wasn't I have to commend us both for really sticking to it, and there were many years where we didn't really talk to each other a lot, and we weren't really involved in each other's lives, and whether it was my choice or whether it was her choice is irrelevant. It just kind of, on both ends, we both just didn't put forth the effort, I think. And she was in law school, she got married, she had 2 kids, and I was kind of living my own little bohemian, free-spirited life that I was living, and I think there was just a disconnect for a really long time, and I really feel like the last decade, maybe a little bit, maybe like the last 8 years, we have finally come to a place to where I can honestly say that I consider my sister my friend now. Yeah. And that we can have conversations, and we do text each other, and we don't talk every day, but we never have. We're
never been that way.
I'm just not that. Other than my mom, we're just not that kind of family.
Yeah.
And other than my mom, who texts, I'm pretty sure texts both of us every day. My sister and me and her will just message each other. I'll DM something to her on Instagram that's like, hey, remember this show? And it'll be like a clip from something from the 90s. And I really feel like we finally have reached a place to where we are friends. And it really dawned on me, I think the last time we were together for Maddie's graduation party, where I was just like, my sister and I are friends now. It was just kind of, it was a really nice feeling. And, so that's my relationship with my sister.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, I was just thinking again, just real quick, I think another thing that is difficult is you never ventured far, and neither did Sarah, from Baton Rouge. You went to Florida for 2 years, but that was 2 years, and you were probably back and forth a few times.
Yeah.
Where my brother joined the Army in the spring of 1977, and he never moved back to New Orleans. Mm-hmm. He was all over the place with the Army, then Dallas, then Houston, and I was all over myself, to Monroe, to Seattle, back. And again, so we were never close perimeter geographically.
Right.
And sort of the same with my sister, actually, even her more so. Like when she left for college after her sophomore year of college, she got married, moved to Opelousas, Dallas. She moved back, Houston, back. And so again, and I really do attribute in the younger years, my relationship with my siblings, just, we weren't like friends because we weren't the same peer age. And again, they just saw me as a bratty little sister, which is who I was. And so, so I mean, I think I've mentioned it before, was like really by 1981, I was the only kid in the house. And the two of them left and they never really moved back. So yeah, I was only with my siblings for 11 years. I mean, together.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So I think that's a big difference in our way we have our relationships.
So there's a really, a big part of this episode is what the whole episode is about, is they're selling their childhood home, and they're kind of, every item is a memory, and especially when it's the one house, because I personally didn't experience this. I moved out of my childhood home. The house that I grew up in, we moved when I was about 9 or 10, and then we moved into Azalea Lakes, but my parents got divorced, and so then my dad lived in two places until he found the place that he lives in now. So it was like I kind of never had like a childhood home. I could kind of say I had Azalea Lakes, and I consider that to be my childhood home because that's the one I have the most memories in, but I just didn't have that. And I know you did. You had the same house just like my mom did until the flood. She had you had the same house from the time you were born until both of your parents passed away, and y'all had to give everything away. So what, because I was too young to be a part of that process when we moved out of the house in Central. So what was that like, having to do that, having to like empty your house out?
So actually it goes back to, I will say, even before my mom passed away, because like, my brother would argue with me and say my mom was a hoarder. She was not a hoarder. I mean, she kept stuff, but she kept, like we all keep memories and little tchotchkes and things. Now, her sewing room was another story. There was just a lot of shit in that room. Yes. I mean, fabric and notions and like all kinds of stuff. Yes, that room did look like a fabric hoarder, and it was very unorganized. But the rest of the house was relatively fine. Yes, it was fine.
Other than the sewing room that I can verify to everyone, it was a perfectly fine. And it wasn't one of those houses that smelled weird.
Yeah, so it was fine.
It was fine.
So, but, there were just things like that my mom would keep that we would just be like, oh my God, or clothes or whatever it was, and so like each time, like starting about 4 or 5 years truly before my mom passed away, we would like sneak and throw things away that we thought she wouldn't really notice. Like we would go into like her closet and be like, yeah, she's had this shirt since like 1960 or 1970 that she has not worn in 20 plus years, and we would sneak it and throw it out, or shoes or whatever it was, papers and just junk. So we had been doing that, but still, you saw the house. There was still a lot. Yeah. But when my mom passed away in 2020, there was a point when over the years I had actually considered purchasing our house, not really necessarily to ever live in it, to maybe use it as an investment property. But the thought of that and the cost of living in New Orleans and the utilities and insurance, just the costs were astronomical, and we decided against that. So we decided to sell it as is, but it also involved throwing out a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so from July of 2020 until essentially July of 2021, every week I would go and work on throwing stuff out of the house. So mind you, my mom was not obviously a really rich person. So we were doing this ourselves, and we were trying not to have to use like paid help or paid construction, like dumpsters or anything. We were using essentially the trash once a week to throw stuff out, just because it was the only way to do it. So I would literally about once or twice a week go to the house and fill the trash can up of just whatever I could find. We were trying to make the house ready for an estate sale. We all went through, the three of us went through what we wanted, like any furniture. I have my childhood armoire. I have my parents' cedar chest. Those were the main two pieces of furniture. Yes, the front door. Yeah. I was talking about furniture. Of removing things in the house. I have like her curio cabinet in Maddie's room. And a couple of like a coffee table that we actually, I think, gave away.
It's upstairs.
Oh, it's upstairs. We gave something away. Anyway, just other random stuff. And of course, the front door to our house that I had brought home from Honduras is in our living room as a piece of art. But it took about a year. My sister would come about once a month on a Saturday or every other month. My brother came maybe once or twice to help. And we probably had, I think, like 3 garage/estate sales. Your mom came, Alicia came, I think Wes and Donnie came one time to help. You came a couple of times. I think Rebecca's friend Vicky came one time to help. And it's a lot of work, and I know it's hard, but I think a lot of times you just have to like take what you want out of it and just also tell yourself, like, just very intently, it's just stuff.
It's just stuff.
Yeah. And the hope is that someone else can use it and create new memories, because once really the estate sale started, I was like, it was cathartic of cleaning the house and getting it ready to sell. But it was funny with the prices that they were asking on the show for stuff. I was like, oh my God, she was like, oh my God, you gave away dad's whatever for $20. That was worth like $600. I'm like, no one's going to pay $600 for anything at a garage sale, like, come on. And so, it's a hard thing to do, to go through a lifetime of stuff, especially in a house that my parents had lived there from 1963 until 2020.
Yeah.
And so that was essentially almost 60 years worth of stuff.
Yeah.
That had been collected and loved, and, here's hoping other people were able to enjoy it. And we made some money, and we ended up selling the house a month or so, like after the last estate sale. It sold in like 3 days. We had an offer the first day and sold it. It was a good little house. We've gone by there. Rebecca goes by there usually when she goes to visit our parents, and they have remodeled it, and we went in. Did you go in with you?
I didn't go in, but you sent pictures.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Me and Rebecca went in, and it's just amazing what they did and how they changed it and updated it. And so it's nice that someone else is making new memories in 4800. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But because like when Warwick flooded for y'all, there was nothing to salvage for sure on the first floor.
Yeah, so we basically...
You lost Penny's house in the 2016 flood, which was your mom's home.
Yeah, when they moved down here from Memphis, I think my mom was like 13 or 14. So...
Wow, so that was their home since that time.
Yeah, so that's, probably 1969, 1970. So also a very long time. And Yeah, I remember gutting out it was just so weird being there after the flood and it just not being that house anymore, because despite not having a childhood home, that was probably the closest thing to a childhood home that I had, because I used to go there all the time. I briefly lived there a few times.
Holidays.
I would spend the night over there all the time. I absolutely loved my grandma, and she was my boo, and like she loved
she
me.
Was your tootie.
She loved me, and like I was a definitely, if you could call me a mama's boy, I was also a grandma's boy. I absolutely loved my grandma. And going through that house was, after the flood, was, I mean, just it was honestly like, it was just heartbreaking. It was just,
oh, for sure.
And then I just remember like my sister was in the back in my grandma's room, like going through her stuff, and found like her wedding dress that had been destroyed and how old that was. And my sister just started bawling because we had to just throw away her wedding dress. I mean, we had to throw away my grandma's wedding dress. I mean, like it was really, I remember getting there, and I remember not being there for a long time because I just kept getting really upset, and I was just like, I don't want to be here. I was just like, I don't want this to be my memory of this place. And you know, I obviously it just makes me sound like I just didn't want to work, but I mean, like I was very much just like, get me out of here. Like I want this to be my last memory of this place. Which I mean was pretty selfish of me. I should have just stayed and helped. But I just remember like just looking around and being like, I'm never gonna be inside this house again. It was just I was not okay with it. I think at the time I was in so much shock that I didn't really like process it, and it was just like I went over there once to help gut it out, and then I never went back there. And so it was just.
Didn't we go back once to go like?
I think maybe we like looked around when they like first started
trying to sell it.
First starting to sell it and remodeled it, and it was still like gutted out.
Yeah, it was still
bit.
Gutted.
And it was just really weird to be there, and yeah, I missed that house. I loved that house. I
remember your mom sent us pictures of the guy who remodeled it and really changed it, kind of like my mom's.
Yeah.
Like it was wild to see a new vision versus from what we knew.
Right.
Like I remember walking into my mom's house, and from the front door I could see all the way to the back of the house. And that had never been my view, because it was the living room,
it was crazy,
the
how
kitchen, dining.
They did a really good job.
And then the living room, like den in the back. And I was like, wow, I can see from the front door to the back door now. And it's so amazing. And it was the same with Penny's. Obviously, you know, your heart still is, you know, 20 years ago. So I totally feel that with you, because, you know, that was Penny's house. That was your grandpa's house. So, yeah.
All right, you want to get into this plot summary?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Sisters pilot summary. Sisters Alex, Frankie, and Georgie are together in a sauna talking about what's going on in their lives and various small talk subjects. They begin talking about sex and if they've ever had multiple orgasms. So apparently Alex's daughter Reed asked her mom about multiple orgasms, which I guess this was supposed to be like, this is the 90s. We talk about this stuff now, but I was just like, can't even imagine my sister. I don't know how old Reed was supposed to be. I guess she was supposed to be a teenager, but
I would have never asked my mother about orgasms as a teenager.
No. So yeah, so they start talking about sex and if they've ever had multiple orgasms. Alex says 5. Georgie had 3 once, she thinks. Alex says their other sister, Teddy, who's not there, has claimed she's had 25. Like, really, are you counting? Oh, that's number 13.
Oh, yeah.
That's number 14.
Right.
If you're counting your orgasms, you're not enjoying sex. When they ask Frankie, she gets embarrassed and leaves. Just then, all the other women in the sauna start calling out their number, that was actually pretty funny. It's like off camera. You hear all the other women in the sauna saying the number of multiple orgasms they've had. Georgie arrives at her childhood home, which has a for sale sign in the front yard. The house was put on the market after the girl's father passed away about a year ago. The house has recently been purchased, and all the sisters have different feelings about the ordeal. As Georgina walks up to the front door, she has a flashback to her and her sisters when they were kids playing football with their dad in the front yard. Georgie enters her home and sees nothing is packed. Their mother, Beatrice, clearly doesn't want to leave their home, even though I'm pretty sure they say in the episode that it was her idea to sell the house. It was the mom's idea to sell the house.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that size of the house, like, my childhood home was not that big.
Yeah.
But, I mean, my mom could barely, at the age she was, keep up with. I mean, I was going to my mom's house once a week before she even died to help keep up.
Later that day, they are having a big family gathering at Georgie's house. Her husband, John, is singing Frank Sinatra on their karaoke machine while Beatrice watches. Alex's daughter, Reed, asks Georgie if Uncle John is having a nervous breakdown. Georgie tells her that he's just in the shop for repair, meaning just kind of, he's just a little broken. He's just trying to figure himself out a little bit. We'll get into that explanation in a second. The three sisters are trying to decide what to do with all the stuff from their childhood home since their mother refuses to pack. Alex suggests that they have an estate sale, not a yard sale. Calling it an estate sale will attract a nicer class of people, according to Alex, which I kind of just like. We all know an Alex. We all know. It's just so funny. She plays it so well. And Alex says she will take care of everything. Frankie then informs them that she must leave early due to having a prior engagement. A little while later, a huge 18-wheeler arrives in front of Georgie's house, and it is their fourth sister, Teddy, and her teenage daughter, Kat, played by Heather McAdam. Rags to riches.
Rags to riches.
Their car broke down in Barstow, so they hitchhiked the rest of the way. So they live in a suburb of Chicago. So apparently they hitchhiked from Barstow to Winnetka. And just the idea of doing that, I'm just like,
what?
Wow,
yeah.
Take a bus. But yeah, I think it's just supposed to. Teddy's a free spirit. I think that's just what it's supposed to be. So they hitchhiked. Teddy, Kat, and DC, the truck driver, join the rest of the family for dinner. They haven't seen Teddy since their father's funeral, where you'll find out in a second. Teddy kind of made a little bit of a scene at the father's funeral, and she kind of left embarrassed and kind of disappeared for a while. That's essentially what happened with Teddy.
Yeah.
Teddy is disappointed that Frankie had to leave early, or as she calls her, Stinkerbell. Teddy tells DC that Frankie is her baby sister, just as she has a flashback to a young Frankie asking Teddy to eat her Brussels sprouts so she can have dessert. That was a really cute little scene. Georgie tells Teddy that she's at a power dinner, which I don't know if that's intentionally like their inside joke, but it's especially supposed to mean that she is meeting with someone and they're hooking up.
Yes.
That's like their code for that. Later that night, we are at Frankie's apartment, and obviously it's not what we're supposed to think it is. She's with some dude. She's in bed with a man, but not just any man. It's Mitch, who just so happens to be Teddy's ex-husband.
I can just say, like, even then when I was watching this show, I was like, ooh,
right.
Especially learning how far apart Frankie is from Teddy. Like, it just reminds me, like, if I would get together with any of my sister's ex-husbands or husband, you know, I'm like, no, gross.
So while they're in bed, Frankie gets a call from Teddy informing her that she's back in town. Frankie relays the message to Mitch. Both look worried for obvious reasons. John is back on the karaoke machine. Teddy asks Georgie how long he's been singing. Georgie says a few months. John was recently fired from his job after a business deal went awry. Since then, John has been having somewhat of an existential crisis and uses singing as a coping mechanism. Teddy asks Georgie how she's doing, something she doesn't get asked very often. And Georgie tells her that she's fine. She's busy, but she's fine. Georgie asks Teddy to come over to their parents' house to start preparing for the estate sale. Teddy says she and Kat are going to see Mitch. Alex, Georgie, and Frankie are at their childhood home planning the estate sale. Alex and Georgie are asking Frankie about her relationship with Mitch. Something that, okay, so it seemed like, and this is all fresh in my head because I just had the episode on while I was doing this. It seemed as if Georgie knew about Mitch, and then Alex had just found out about it. That's kind of how it seemed, because Alex is like, why am I the last one to know about this? And it seemed like Georgie already knew that it was going on. which is so typical. Even in a friend group, you always have like the one person that you tell everything to, and then everyone else kind of finds out later. Alex and Georgie are asking Frankie about her relationship with Mitch, something that Georgie knew but Alex just found out, and Teddy is completely unaware of it. Frankie finds a pair of her dad's shoes, which causes a flashback to little Frankie walking around in those same shoes. Georgie finds her dad's tuxedo, and she has a flashback to dancing with him at her wedding. The flashbacks were really sweet. Like I kind of forgot.
Oh, I love them.
I kind of forgot about that aspect of the show. Maybe when I was watching it, I didn't understand what I was watching, but like I kind of forgot that they, not half the show, but every episode there were flashbacks to them when they were kids.
Oh yeah,
because it was like they did everything together. Mitch is excited to see Kat and wants to take advantage of the time he has with her. Teddy begins flirting with Mitch and begins reminiscing about the early days of their relationship. Mitch then confesses to Teddy that he's seeing someone, her sister. Teddy asks which one, which was really funny because I'm just like, well, there's only one option. I think it's just the option you don't want it to be because it's your baby sister. Frankie arrives at Georgie's house to be greeted by Teddy, who immediately tells Frankie she knows about her and Mitch. Teddy pretends to be okay with it at first, but then snaps at Frankie sarcastically, asking her, "So how does it feel to get everything you've always wanted?" And then leaves. We see Slut spray painted on the side of Frankie's Porsche and presumably done by Teddy.
Oh yeah, it's done by Teddy.
The estate sale has arrived, and it is way over the top.
Oh my god!
Alex has hired caterers. She has servers. She is serving hors d'oeuvres, crab balls,
champagne fountain.
Teddy is appalled that Alex is being so cold, selling all their memories for a cheap price. Something you were talking about a second ago. Selling the chair for originally marked for $30. Well, it was just kind of funny because Alex was like kind of telling Teddy like, look. Like people are going to be pushy and they're going to try and haggle with you about prices and you have to stay strong. But then it's the guy who goes up to Alex and is like, this chair says for $35, I'll give you $20. And she's just like, all right. So it was just kind of funny how she made this big deal about don't let them haggle you, but I'll sell this for $15 cheaper. Yeah. Because he had the $20 bill in his hand. It's like,
and you just want to get rid of stuff.
Yes. Frankie angrily arrives and goes straight to Teddy. Frankie is irate that Teddy would destroy her property and calls her a bitch. Teddy informs her that Mitch is off limits. And then she makes a comment about, y'all been divorced for 3 years. The statute of limitations is over. I'm like, that's your sister's ex-husband. It's off limits.
I know. I'm just like, I think we even talked. I'm like, I couldn't even imagine dating a friend of yours, much less any one of your siblings.
Oh, and I forgot to leave out the part of the fact that that Frankie was their flower girl at their wedding. So just remind you made the comment earlier, just reminding all of y'all of like he's when Frankie's telling Georgie and Alex about her relationship with Mitch, she's like, I feel like I've known him forever. He's like, you were the flower girl at their wedding. Like,
right, that's how little she was.
I don't know how far apart they are in age, but according to the flashbacks, Frankie is much younger than the other girls.
Yeah.
I think that's what's supposed to be implied, even though in real life they were all the same age, which is kind of funny. So Teddy informs her that Mitch is off limits. Frankie apologizes for not telling her about it. And Teddy ends the conversation by telling Frankie to remind herself that the next time she and Mitch are having sex, when he closes his eyes, he'll be thinking about her, Teddy. Frankie is left speechless. I gotta say, that was a good one. I was like, you get it, Teddy. I was like, you have every right to be pissed. Teddy approaches her mother and apologizes for running off after her father's funeral. We see a flashback to the funeral, and this is what I was talking about earlier. While all the pallbearers, who are all men, are carrying the casket, Teddy is offended that it's men carrying the casket and demands to help, only for it to fall on the ground. Which, I'm kind of with Teddy on not making the scene, but I'm kind of like, why not have the daughters do? I don't know. Like, I understand pallbearers are traditionally men, but like, I don't know. I just thought like I understood why she was upset. Teddy tells her mother that she is sober and has been for a few months. She has come back to make things right with her family and to reconnect with everyone. Beatrice forgives Teddy and they hug. It was a very sweet scene. Later that night, Beatrice, alone in the house, begins to drink heavily. So we're kind of like, throughout the whole episode, anytime you see Beatrice, the mom, she has got a drink in her hand, or she is asking for a drink. It's very clear, and it's talked about later in the episode that, and also Teddy being a recovering addict, it's very obvious that the mom is an alcoholic.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, we don't know specifically understand. We are just kind of led to believe that it's all because of depression from her husband dying, but you find out a lot more about their marriage as the show goes on. But as of right now, you're just kind of being led to believe that she's drinking to numb herself because she misses her husband, which is partly true.
Yeah.
She begins to drink heavily and has a flashback to her husband telling her to come to bed. Beatrice decides to drive while drunk and crashes the car. She is arrested and Alex picks her up from jail. It's very clear that Beatrice is not handling the move very well at all. The sisters get together the next day and start to second-guess selling the house. Georgie says they have until midnight to back out of the deal. The girls arrive at their parents' house to find all the movers still outside, having done nothing. They inform the sisters that the doors are locked and no one is answering. The girls break in and find their mother had set up their entire living room with fake Christmas tree and decorations. Beatrice tells them that she wanted to decorate the house one last time and admits that this move has been much harder than she was expecting, which I'm glad she finally admitted that. She keeps trying to tell herself that a house is just a house, but it's her whole life. Even though it's her daughter's childhood home, they have their own homes now, but she doesn't. Teddy tells her that it's just a part of her life. Teddy tells her that it's just a part of her life and she's about to create new memories in her new life. Beatrice says that she doesn't want that. She wants to be in her home, but knows that things aren't the same, so she knows that she has to move out and move on, but it's very difficult for her to do. Beatrice and the sisters gather around the piano and sing Silent Night one last time together in their home. We then see both the adult and childhood versions of the sisters singing, which was also a very sweet scene. The movers pack up all the things, and that's it. The house is sold. Teddy tells her sisters that she is staying in town. The girls say one last goodbye to their home. They each have various flashbacks while walking through their home one last time and then leave. End of episode.
And I can say...
That was close.
Yeah, you almost just spilled your drink there. That I was really thankful that my mom was able to stay in our house until she passed away, and then she came here for a few weeks before she passed away. But we talked about it in Treme that after Katrina, a lot of the senior citizens moved and never came back, and we were lucky that nothing had happened to her home, but that she was also able to maintain it, that it was a one-story small home that was manageable for her, because the house in this show is 2 stories. It's quite large. Victorian, and when senior citizens get older, it's hard for us to maintain our house between jobs and travel and whatever life coming along. So, it's hard to move on from your home, and, I can see why she was sad and, having to give it up while she was still, very capable, but, not totally able to keep up with a big freaking house.
Right.
So,
all right, ready to wrap this one up?
Let's wrap it up.
All right, that wraps up this episode. Thanks for tuning in. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. You can also follow us on Instagram at WeJudgePilotPod. We're also on Facebook. Leave us a comment, suggest a show for us to watch, or leave some emojis in the comments. What you got?
All right, so any of the girl emojis to represent the sisters. And then the house, the grandma to represent B.
Okay.
The car.
I kept forgetting to call her B. I just realized that. Okay.
The car, the heart emoji, the broken heart emoji, the bed, the champagne, men's shoes, any of the drinks, the spa girl emojis, because they always open up in the spa with the towel on their heads. The microphone and the music notes, the seafood, any of the fish, because Mitch is a seafood market owner, then the Christmas tree, and then finally the boy and the girl emoji to represent you and Sarah. Aww. And then the 2 girl emojis to represent me and Rebecca, our sisters.
We're all a bunch of tooties.
All right, well, we are going to head out now, but we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening, especially to our sisters.
Love you.
Love y'all.